And then Kamala Shila in particular begins to speculate about what does the last 500 mean. And then he's checked all these sutras and he came up with what it means. And it relates to the decline of the Dharma in the world. You know, how will it happen that the Dharma dies out in this world? And then Chone Drapa Sherup in his commentary to the Abhidharmakosha, he also discusses that. So I thought you might be interested about the discussions about the end of the Dharma in the world. I mean, the Buddha had predicted that his own teachings would die out in this planet. And particularly Vasubandhu at the end of the Abhidharmakosha, in the last chapter, he talks about the end of the Dharma in the world. To understand how the Dharma will end, you need the two kinds of Dharma. So we'll start out with that. Say Lungicha, Topecha. Lungicha, Topecha. Okay. Lung means literally, lung means, it's related to the word for wind, and it means the spoken word, the word. Okay. The Dharma in the sense of the word. Okay. Like when someone gives a lung. A lung means an oral transmission. We're going to have an oral transmission. Okay. Next Sunday. My Lama received the oral transmission for the Diamond Cutter from one of his great Lamas, Drup Kangpa, who is related to, I believe he also taught Pabonka Rinpoche. And then we're going to get, I'm going to pass it on to you guys. That's where you get someone just gets up and reads out the whole sutra, and you just get this oral blessing from the lineage of that. Okay. Then you can pass it on to other Westerners, which is cool. Topecha, Topa means realizations. Okay. Topa means the Dharma in the sense of realizations in people's minds. Okay. So the first thing is the Dharma in the sense of the physical manifestations of Dharma, the books and the teachings, the verbal teachings. And then Topecha is the Dharma in the sense of it existing in people's minds. Mm-hmm. I'll give you examples of each. First, there's what we call the three baskets of scripture. Okay? All Buddhist scripture can be divided into three baskets. It's what you hear, it's called Tripitaka. Americans say Tripitaka in Sanskrit, but these are the three baskets. The first one is called Abhidharma. By the way, the basket of Abhidharma is not the same as the topic called Abhidharma. Okay, like the Abhidharmakosha is teaching a whole system of philosophy that was followed in India by a school named by Bhashika, and that's not what this means. This means a whole section of the Buddhist teachings called Abhidharma. Then there's the Sutra Pitaka. Obviously, all the teachings of the Buddha that are not secret are called sutras. But this refers to a specific group of the teachings which are also called sutras. So don't get confused between general sutra and sutra basket. Mm-hmm. And then the third one is Vinaya. So when you talk about the physical Dharma in the world, you know, does the physical Dharma still exist? Do the teachings still exist in the world? You could start by saying, does the word still exist in the world? And then you would say, do these three baskets still exist in the world? Okay. How do you divide these three baskets? Okay. What's the difference between the three baskets? They're divided by their subject matter. Okay. Abhidharma treats Abhidharma is books that primarily talk about the training of wisdom, the subject of wisdom. Sutra in this case means the books that treat the second training, which is what? Meditation. And then Vinaya, ethical life, yeah, training on an ethical life. These three trainings build on each other, and we talked about it Friday night if you were there. In order to see emptiness, for example, your mind must, in order to see it directly, your mind must be at a certain level of concentration. And we talked about that. It actually corresponds to it's a certain cause for a birth in the form realm, actually. It's a cause for the first section of that and for the preliminary part of the first section of that. In other words, to see emptiness directly, your mind must be at a certain meditational level. That level is not even in this realm. At that point, your mind is not in the desire realm. Your body is still in the desire realm, but you're totally out of the, you're not aware of your body at that time. You're not aware of any of the objects of the senses. And your mind is in a totally different realm. It's in a Samden Dambo. We call it the first concentration level. And as you come out of that, you have a physical sensation of descending from that. It's a physical sensation you would have of coming out of that afterwards. But in order to get to see emptiness directly, you must reach that level of meditation. You have to reach that level of meditation. It's only on that level that you can see emptiness. In order to reach that level of meditation, your heart has to be clean. Your life has to be clean. You have to be following an ethical life. It's impossible to reach this kind of mental quietude if you have anything major on your conscience. It's impossible. Can't do it. So these build on each other. That's why the three trainings are the three trainings. First you clean up your life, and I don't mean be perfect, because we can't be until much later. But major dirty things that you're doing, lying, stealing, hurting other people, those have to be cleaned up before your mind can reach a state of quietude. Based on that, you can reach that level of meditation. Based on that, you can see emptiness directly. So these three baskets, Abhidharma, Sutra, and Vinaya, are the word, the Dharma in the sense of the word. These three trainings are the Dharma in the sense of what? Realizations. That is the Tokpecha. Okay? The Dharma has two parts. The books and then actual realizations inside of people. The books divide into these three sections, and the realizations basically divide into three different types. Wisdom, meditation, and ethical life. Okay? Those are the Tokpecha. And at the very end of the Abhidharma Kosha, Vasubandhu, it almost makes you cry. He talks about these two divisions, and then he says, he starts to describe how they will die out in the world. Okay, which one do you think dies out first? Huh? It's actually the realizations. Okay, people stop having realizations. The books are still there in the library on a CD-ROM somewhere. Okay, the books are still around. They're collecting dust in some New York Public Library warehouse out on 43rd Street. That's the Lungicha. That's the death of the Dharma, the physical Dharma. The Buddhist books are being lost in the world, being destroyed, being lost. Nobody cares much. You know, they're every day being lost, and nobody cares. They're just put away somewhere, and that's it. They die out. They die out second. This dies out first. You know, that people really understand the Dharma and are practicing it. That dies out first. What does it mean to keep the Dharma, or what does it mean for it to die out? Vasubandhu, he describes that also. The Tokpecha, the realizations in the hearts of people, obviously that dies out when people stop achieving these levels. When people stop achieving renunciation or bodhicitta or wisdom, then the Tokpecha is dying out. Lungicha, he says, is dying out when people can't explain it correctly anymore. Okay. To say that it's still being preserved in the world means that at least somebody's around who could explain it properly. Tokpecha still exists in the world if there's anyone around who still understands it, who's still reaching those levels through the practice of Dharma. Okay. Now, what's this deal about 500s or no 5? When is it going to happen? Okay, when is the Dharma going to die out? Did it die out yet? I'm going to give you, Choni Dapashita, he gives a whole list of scriptures, okay? I'll give you a few of them. He checked a whole lot of sutras, and in his day there was a lot more information available. And he goes through. I'm going to give you a few of them. Say Dode Kelsan. Dode Kelsan. Dode Kelsan says, by the way, most of these dates are dated from the passing of the Buddha. Okay, it's dated from the day that he reached his parinirvana. Okay. In this sutra, the Buddha says, my teaching will stay in the world 500 years in its pure form. And then 1500 years in what we call a shadow form. It'll still be around. It won't be very serious. It won't be very strong. 500 years in its true form. Another 1500 years in sort of as they call Sugnyan means just an image of its former self, a shadow of its former self. Okay. And then those two things have disappeared in the world. The teachings are no longer being explained properly, and people are no longer reaching the major spiritual levels. Okay. That's one presentation. Say Ningje, Pekar. Ningje, Pekar. Ningje means compassion. Pekar means the White Lotus Sutra. Okay, it's the White Lotus Sutra of compassion. Okay. In there it says 1500 years. Say Dawa Ningbo. Dawa means moon. Ningbo means essence, the essence of the moon. The sutra of the essence of the moon. That sutra says 2,000 years. Say Dorche, Delba. Dorche, Delba. Dorche is a lazy way to write Dorche Chupa. Okay? Sometimes they call it Dorche. Sometimes they just call it Che. The Mongolians call it Jodba. Delpa means commentary. This refers to Kamala Shila's commentary on this book, on the DiamondCutterSutra. Okay. Kamala Shila's commentary on the DiamondCutterSutra. He's a little more optimistic. I'll give you one more. Say, Lamo, Timegi, Do. Lamo, Timegi, Do. Lamo means what? Goddess, okay. Lady Angel. She's right there. Time. Time means Vimala, stainless, pure, immaculate. Okay. Time Kido, the Sutra of the Immaculate Goddess. Okay. I always heard about this quotation and I never found it. And maybe 6 months ago I found it. Choni Dapashedu quotes it. It says, Lo Nitong Ngapyana. Say Lo Nitong Ngapyana. Dong Marchen. Ki Yuldu. Dambe Cha. Dar. Lo means years. Nitong Ngapya means 2,500 years. Na here means after. Okay. Dong means face. Marchen means a ruddy complexion. Tibetans call us Dong Marchen. It means Western people. Okay, people with a white complexion with ruddy cheeks or something. Okay, Dong Marchen gi Yuldu. Yuldu means to their land. Dambe Che means the holy Dharma. Dar means it will spread. So I think that's really cool. That's a prediction in the sutra. It's still in the Kangyur. The sutra is there. I always heard about this and I never really believe all this kind of thing, you know. But it's there. And it says that, oh, that's the Buddha. Yeah. And he's saying after 2,500 years, the holy Dharma will spread to the land of the ruddy-faced people, which is what Tibetans call us. And then Kamalashila goes into explaining why the Dharma will last for 5,000 years. And Chonedapa Shedu, he shows why he believes that's correct, for many reasons, okay? But basically, I think the scenario we can count on is 2,500 years for it to get to the West, and 2,500 years to be here. So, I mean, from what I understand of these scriptures, I see the Dharma lasting in the West for 2,500 years. And starting now, starting right now, okay? Starting in this 100-year period here. So I think it's pretty exciting. I'll show you why the Buddha says in the last 500, okay? He doesn't say anything else. He doesn't explain himself. But there are other sutras which describe 10 periods of 500 years each. Which makes 5,000, okay? And by the way, there are other scriptures. I didn't go into all of them, but there are other scriptures that say 5,000 as well. The 10 periods go like this. In the first 500 years, lots of people are achieving Arhat. Lots of people are getting to Arhat. What's Arhat? Reach Nirvana. Okay? Reach Nirvana. Killed the enemy. Who's the enemy? Mental affliction, all right? Getting mad back at the boss. Okay? That's the enemy. There will be, in the first 500 years following the passing of the Buddha, many people achieved that. So it was called the era of the Arhats. Okay? Non-returner is a stage that you reach after you have wiped out a specific number of mental afflictions. Not all of them, but there are six mental afflictions, six versions of mental afflictions that if you wipe them out, you become a non-returner. It means you don't come back to where? The desire realm. Okay, we are in the desire realm. What other realms are there? In samsara there are two other realms, form realm, formless realm. You can't see them. You never will know if they exist really until you reach the path of seeing. In fact, after the path of seeing. But we are in the desire realm, and we are stuck here, and we were brought here by our mental afflictions. If you're in this realm, you're here because you have some mental affliction. Okay? If you're sitting on this platform and you are who you seem to be, which we never know, right? You're here because you have some kind of special mental afflictions. You know what your specialty is. I know what mine is, you know. It's usually on the anger side or the desire side. You know, normally you have one or the other. If you're lucky, you have both, I guess. Definitely a good dose of ignorance. But if you're here, and if you're in this kind of body, this dead-end body, literally dead end, then you got here by mental afflictions, and that's why you're here. And unless you've worked really hard in this life, you still have them. You still have the ones that got you here, by definition. Non-returner has been able to overcome 6 versions of those mental afflictions, specific intensities and versions of those mental afflictions. They will never come back to this particular realm. They will never be born in this realm again. They will never come back to the desire realm. Okay. Excuse me? Yeah, involuntarily. Okay. Well, there's a big debate whether anyone even comes back. Stream enter is what? Equals Arya. Anyone who's seen emptiness directly, whether or not you're a bodhisattva, doesn't matter. Whether or not you have true bodhicitta in your mind. Okay. If you've seen emptiness directly, you are an Arya, and you are a stream enterer.
But an Arhat could seem emptiness.
Arhat comes much later after Arya. Okay. Arhat means someone who has reached nirvana based on seeing emptiness directly many, many years before. Typically 7 lifetimes before. Okay, very typically.
What's higher, a non-returner or a stream enterer?
Non-returner is higher. You can't get rid of any kleshas until you see emptiness directly. Okay. And in between there's a once returner, but they don't get to have a kalpa. Okay. These 3 eras, these 3 groups of 500 years each, right? These 3 are called the, what would you call it? The era of achievement, Dupe Liu, the era of achievement. Okay, that 1500-year period is set apart and called the era of achievement. The next 3 eras, I'll make it short. They are based on the 3 trainings that we just had, which are what? That's short attention span. No, that's the books. How about the realization? Yeah, wisdom. Meditation. And ethical life. Okay. So during the next 3 divisions of 500 years each, many people are achieving the training of wisdom. Then after that, people can't achieve that anymore, so all they can get to is the training of meditation. And for the next 500 years, people can only get as far as, many people are only getting as far as the training of on ethical way of living. Okay, things are degenerating. Okay, yeah.
How does 3 and 4 differ?
You can master the 3 trainings before you even enter the first of the 5 paths. Okay? You can become very proficient in the 3 trainings before you even reach the first of the 5 paths. Okay? So this is referring to a very basic intellectual understanding of emptiness and karma, for example. basic beyond, I mean way beyond us, okay? You know what I mean? To get to the first path is a great achievement. In this life, if you could really get fed up with this life, you would be at a great level. That would be a big achievement.
So you answered the first half in this renunciation?
Yeah, true renunciation.
The free training were only free training when they practiced this renunciation.
Maybe you could say with feelings of renunciation, but not with the true total renunciation. There's many kinds of renunciation prior to the first path. For example, there's Buram Gishing Tabu Nyenjin, which means sugarcane renunciation, which means it feels like renunciation, but it's not very strong. Or sugarcane bodhicitta, for example, it's called that. There's another one called Nyenjin Busa, which means goosebump renunciation. And that's when your mother dies or something in this life, seriously. And then for like 6 months, you really understand renunciation. And then it wears off. And you go back to living your old life, running after your career and houses and money and girlfriends and stuff like that. Okay. Number 7. 8.
That whole era has a...
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. This is called the, what is it called? I made a mistake, sorry. These 3 are called the era of results. Okay, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. These 3 are called the era of results. Okay. The first 3, 1, 2, and 3. Then the next 3 are called the era of achievement. Okay. You could say era of practice. Next the next 3 are eras when people are keeping the physical dharma, okay, the lungi chu. So if you divide that into 3, what would you get? Abhidharma, Sutra, Vinaya. Okay. During these 3 periods of 500 years, people are still teaching it correctly. It's still surviving in the world as far as the physical manifestations of the Dharma. It looks to me like Tokpe Chu was pretty much endangered after this point. It looks like after 3,000 years, realizations are sort of rare, more rare. And then it begins to be just the physical Dharma being left in the world. People can teach it, but they haven't really realized it. Okay. Abhidharma, it's the 3 baskets. Many people are able to learn and pass on the information, but not the realizations. And that happens a lot, even in these days. Abhidharma, Sutra, and Vinaya. Okay. And the last of the 500 is called Taktam. Oh, by the way, these 3 together are called the era of Lung, which is what? The word, the physical Dharma, the books. Okay. Say Taktam. Taktam. Taktam means just a trace left. Just a trace left. Yeah.
What is the mechanism whereby is all predicted on? Maybe just through clairvoyance, I don't know, but why was the mechanism whereby it degenerates?
There's a... Oh, so Buddha asked a good question. said, what makes it degenerate? Basically, yeah. Why doesn't it get better? Why does it get worse? Okay. And I'll talk about a Dharma teaching, okay? What's the emptiness of this Dharma teaching? What's the emptiness of this week going on? What's the emptiness of these 10 classes? Yeah, it's anything but not your projection, okay? All right? What's its dependent origination? Let's start. That's a little easier. It's your projection, okay? This series of classes is your projection. There's this guy up there in a red suit, you know, and he's talking these noises. And you hear these noises. And different people sitting there have totally different reactions, completely different reactions. You know, some people hear the holy Dharma that's going to save their lives and make them reach nirvana. Some people find it intellectually interesting or not too much. And some people find it quite boring. That's the emptiness of this teaching going on. Okay? The data is the same. It's the same red suit, the same sounds coming out of the guy's mouth. But there's different people interpreting that data in different ways. Why? It's seeds in your own mind. Okay, your mind has certain karmic seeds. And you don't have a choice, frankly. I mean, if you're going to be bored, you got to be bored. Because your seeds are ripening in such a way that they are forcing you to perceive this as boring. They're forcing you to perceive it that way. And if you're getting something out of it, or even something of ultimate benefit, you have different kinds of seeds. Now, those seeds are very interesting. You know, the seed that would, this guy standing up there, or somebody like the Buddha gets up and says, "You're emptiness. You're nothing." And then somebody perceives emptiness based on that. You know, the Buddha gets up and says something crazy. You don't exist. Bodhisattvas don't exist. Nobody reached nirvana. And the Buddha doesn't have any signs when he has signs on his body. You know, somebody gets up and says something crazy like that, and suddenly 500 people reach the perception of emptiness. I mean, this is what was happening in the Buddha's time. It was very common in the Buddha's time. Even his students, when they taught, they have lists, you know, 400 people reached the perception of emptiness, 300 got to this, 200 got to that. Just when they opened their mouths and said some simple thing like, nobody reaches nirvana. And they understood it immediately, what he was talking about. He understood the whole thing about projections and all that. So again, this teaching itself is a projection of you. The energy of that projection has to wear out. Okay, you have a certain karma in your mind stream that was planted there by your past life guy who worked his ass off to get you here, you know. I mean, we can all appreciate our past lives, especially me, you know. I mean, somebody was working really hard, you know. Somebody wasn't sleeping much, working hard, practicing like crazy, doing everything, Guru Yoga perfect, you know. And that's how we got to Vajrapani for this week, you know. That somebody did that for you. You should thank them, you know, because we're not collecting those kind of causes. Somebody was extraordinary. Somebody was really extraordinary. Out of a million people, you're here. Each person represents 1 in a million, and you're sitting here listening to this thing. How many karmas ripen in a split second? 64. Okay. Kechik. Jadzoki Kechik. It's called Jadzoki Kechik. Okay. Jadzoki Kechik. There are 64 karmas ripening in that moment. For you to maintain the picture of this guy standing up here for one instant, for one finger snap, requires 64 discrete karmas going off. Okay. 64 different karmic events are ripening for your mind to maintain me talking about the DiamondCutterSutra for the time it takes to snap my fingers. So for you to maintain this image for a week is something extraordinary. I mean, I like to talk, Kortzo appreciate the, wake up. He'll appreciate the bytes involved, okay? I mean, if you talk about it in terms of computers, the reason that computers can't show video very well yet is because, I don't know, it takes like 16 gigabytes to get somebody to move for an hour and a half or something. You know, to have that flow of the pictures, for an hour and a half requires the computing power of all of Bell Laboratories Labs computers 5 years ago or something. I mean, to keep it going requires an extraordinary amount of data. You know, for you just to hear me say one word requires a couple of hundred karmic events going off at the same time. For you to maintain me up here as a projection for the space of a week, you're using up an extraordinary amount of karma. You know, like all the electricity that California is generating this week, you know. I mean, it's some kind of extraordinary amount of karma that you're using up to hear something this holy, to hear the Diamond Sutra taught in these degenerate days for 1 week. To maintain that projection requires an intense amount of karma, an incredible amount of karma. I mean, it's just extraordinary. And it's something like the computing power it would take to keep a whole city, the image of a city working for a whole week or something. And it would be, you can't even imagine what it would take. That's how much karma you are using up to come here for 10 days. And at the end of the 10 days, that karma will be finished. And you don't know if you don't know if you have any more of it. Okay? You may or may not have any more of it. Some people will quit in the middle of the week. And that means they didn't have enough to maintain the whole week. Seriously. I like to be depressing because then people get... No, but if you take joy in it, you generate a lot of good karma. But basically you're burning up... I mean, it'd be much better if you were out watching a movie for 10 days. Or at the beach. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of karma, but it's only like 1% of the karma that it takes to maintain this projection. The karmic seeds in your mind that are required to maintain this dude up there standing for 10 days is extraordinary. It's incredible. And it burns off very easily. You know, that's why you lose teachers. That's why teachers don't stay. That's why teachers go away. That's why teachers pass away. I mean, the karma of keeping them here is infinite. It's very, very difficult for any particular human being to maintain that much karma that long. Like the karma to have the Dalai Lama in the world is extraordinary, and it's wearing out. You know, he's getting old in our perceptions. Our projections are that he's getting old. So this is again another projection. The opportunity to have Dharma, the opportunity to hear it spoken, and especially about emptiness. That's what makes it impermanent. So Subhuti asked a good question. I wanted to talk about that. You know, that's why the Dharma will die in this world. It must die. It doesn't die independently. It doesn't die self-existently. It dies the only way it could die, which is what? Your projections stop. The power of your own karmas to project that thing called Dharma in the world wears out. And if it wears out collectively, that's the end of the Dharma in the world. And it will happen. Yeah. Come on, doctor.
Where are we on the big map, by the way?
About halfway through. Oh, you mean, that's an interesting question.
I was going to ask.
Where are we? You figured out. Buddha question, he said. In the days of the last 500, yeah, will anybody still understand all this stuff? Will there be anyone who still understands everything you've been talking about? And the answer of the Buddha is very sweet. He says, Subhuti, don't ask stupid questions. He says, you shouldn't be asking questions like that. He says, there will come great bodhisattvas, even in those degenerate times, who truly have realized these things and who understand them. He says, don't worry. He says, even in the very degenerate times, there will come great bodhisattvas who understand the wording of it and understand the meaning of it, and who have realized the meaning of it. He says, don't ask that question to me. He says, and then the Buddha starts to talk about those bodhisattvas. And he says, those bodhisattvas won't see any self, those bodhisattvas won't see any person, those bodhisattvas won't see any life. I'm going to change this person, sorry. We'll call it sentient being. We'll call it living being. Sorry. Those bodhisattvas won't see any person. So it's again, we thought he was going to finally give a straight answer. And and he gave another one of those, mystical answers. He said, there will be bodhisattvas, high bodhisattvas in those days. But those bodhisattvas will not see these four things. They will not see any self. They will not see any sentient beings. They will not see any life. They will not see any person. Okay. These four are all synonyms, and they have the same level of existence as the Gakcha. Which is what? They don't exist. Okay. Don't exist. All right? These are synonyms in Majjhimika for Gakcha. These are the four things, these are four more things that we deny even exist. They are synonyms for Gakcha. So is there a dude in a red suit up there talking or not? Am I a self? Am I a person or not? Do I exist or not? Here you have to get into a concept called... Did everybody get that? Oh. Can I put it down here? I think here you get into a really important question that you hear. Does the self exist or not? Buddhism is always talking about no self. You hear the self doesn't exist. And if you're a Westerner who's seriously trying to be a good Buddhist, it makes you sort of schizophrenic, like, am I supposed to be myself or not? Is it wrong to be myself? Is there something I'm missing here? Whose hair am I supposed to comb in the morning? You get a little, you get confused. I mean, they say Buddhism believes in no self, and then you're like, well, who am I then? And is it somehow wrong for me to think of myself, or what am I doing wrong? Okay, you have to distinguish between, say, Yugyu Da, and Megyu Da. Megyu Da. Yug Dog means the self which does exist. The self which does exist. And Megyu Dog means the self that don't exist. Alright? The self that doesn't exist. There's two kinds of dogs. There's two kinds of selves. What's that? The second one is the self which doesn't exist. The first one is the self which does exist. Okay. What's the self that doesn't exist? You tell me. A self-existent self, which means a self which is not a projection onto parts. Okay? So when you say no self in Buddhism, when you say the self doesn't exist, it means a self which is not a projection onto a collection of parts. Did I get that right? The self that doesn't exist is any Michael Roach that could exist without me projecting myself onto these parts. That kind of self doesn't exist. You'll never find it. That kind of self could never change. That kind of self could never reach Buddhahood. That kind of self could never get the four bodies of a Buddha. Why? There wouldn't be any blank me to project a new kind of projection onto, and that's what Buddhahood is. That's how you get to Buddhahood. If I was an independently existing, external, by myself, existing that way, inherently, independent of my projections, independent of my karmic seeds, independent of any kind of emptiness, then I could never change. I would always be stuck in this body. I'd always be like that. The only way to change is if my projections shift. That's the only way I'm ever going to get to be a Buddha. It doesn't happen outside. It's a shift in projections. Okay. A Michael Roach self, which is what it seems to be, some kind of external, independent reality, inherent reality, could never change, could never reach Buddhahood, could never be enlightened. Michael Roach, who's just a projection, and if I could get those projections to shift a bit on that empty, if I could play a different movie on the empty screen, then I could reach Buddhahood. And that's it. So the self that doesn't exist is the one that I look like to you most of the time. In fact, up to about 24 hours ago. Okay? Really. That's the self that doesn't exist. The one that you thought. Where did you think karma was supposed to stay? And how did you think karma was going to come down on you? Was it a UFO was going to deliver the results of karma and come out and put a suit on you and suddenly you're a Buddha? It doesn't work like that. You become a Buddha because your projections upon yourself shift and they're forced upon you by your past deeds. You don't have a choice at that point. Okay? Any other kind of Michael Roach is a two-headed elephant. Is a cucumber growing in midair. It just doesn't exist. There's no such thing. If I were a self-existent Michael Roach, then everybody in this audience would have exactly the same reaction to me. If being boring, medium, or interesting, if any of those three were my quality, if they belonged to me, everybody would be bored. Maybe they are, but that's a different... No, okay? If it was a quality inherent in me, everybody would be having the same reaction to me. It ain't. It's not a quality of me. It's a quality of your own projections, obviously. Okay? So what's the self that doesn't exist? It's one that's externally, it exists out there on its own, and the qualities that you see are qualities of me and not things that you're projecting onto me. Are the projections voluntary? Absolutely not. I mean, when I say projection, I never want you to think, oh, hey, let's just change the projection. Let's make him interesting for I got 20 more minutes, I got to stay here. Let's project him as interesting, You can't do it. Okay, it doesn't work that way. Projections are forced on you. Okay? Any other kind of self doesn't exist. Okay? Any other kind of Michael Roach doesn't exist. A Michael Roach who is self-existently out there as a quality of him, interesting or medium or not or boring, doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. It never did exist. But our minds are always interpreting it that way. We believe that all these things are external to us. We believe that they have their own reality external to us. We believe all the qualities we see in them are qualities that belong to them and not to our minds. And we act on that. And that makes us act ignorantly. You try to manipulate reality rather than changing your own goodness. You try to manipulate the world around you with your arms and fingers rather than changing your karma. Changing your karma is the only way to get what you want. The other things don't work. You've tried it. It just don't work. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's not a cause. Okay? So that you have to distinguish between the two selves. What's the self that does exist? Yeah. There are 4 limbs and a round head up here connected to a torso. And you are seeing something going on, and that's all sense data being glued together in your mind, and your mind imputing it, nice talk, bad talk, not interesting, interesting. But that's your mind. That self that you produce that well, it's called dakpe che. The production of that process, the thing that you came out with at the end, is the existent self. That exists. That's up there talking. That's up there being boring, interesting, or indifferent. Okay? That self exists. I'll say it again. The self that is a result or a production of your projections onto certain data, and you coming out with this guy standing up there and teaching you something, that self exists. I mean, obviously, because it's functioning. It's having an effect on you. If it didn't exist, it couldn't do that. So there obviously is a self that exists, and there obviously is a self that doesn't exist. If Lord Buddha says to Subhuti, those great bodhisattvas in the future are not so stupid to think a self exists, which one is he talking about? The non-existent self, okay? The Buddha is trying to tell Subhuti, okay, Subhuti, it's okay. You asked a stupid question. I cleared it up. Don't ask it again, he says. And then he says, but by the way, I mean, he's always using things as an excuse to talk about emptiness, right? He says, by the way, those bodhisattvas that do come in the future, they are not going to make the mistake that we are making here, that thinking that this self exists independent of my projections. They will not see such a self. They will not see such a semchen. Semchen means living being. They will not see such a sok. Sok means life. They will not see such a gansap. Gansap means person. Okay? Taken independently, these 4 things are equivalent to the gakcha. If you take them as existing independently, inherently, self-existent 4 things, they don't exist. But each one has a brother, which is what? The one that does exist, just because it's a product of your projections. Okay? So each one has 2 parts. There's 2 versions of each. Why does the Buddha mention 4 different things? Why does he just say, they won't believe in a self-existent self? Why does he go through mentioning 4? Kamala Shila gives a really beautiful answer. And I thought, we'll close it with that. That'll be the last thing today. He says, Dak refers to the self that you hold on to when you think you yourself are self-existent. Okay? That's the object that you're holding on to when you think you yourself exist outside of your projections. Does that exist? No. Okay? It's you thinking that you are self-existent. It's the object of your thoughts when you say, Michael is self-existent, or Ellie is self-existent. Okay? That's the object of your idea right then. Is a non-existent me. And for each person it's different. It's the me. It's your me. Okay? Can you have a sense of your own me? Are you a me? Of course you are. You're a projected, artificial me. Okay? Are you an independent me, external of your own projections? Would you be a me the way you are now without your own karmic seeds ripening and forcing you to see certain kind of me? No, not at all. There's no such me like that. So the first time when the Buddha says they don't see any dog or they don't see any self, he's referring to me, the false me, the me that don't exist. Okay? That has a special name in Buddhist philosophy. It's called Jigso La Tawa. Say Jigso La Tawa. Jigso La Tawa. This is the particular kind of ignorance that makes you suffer. The first link of the 12 links is Jigso La Tawa. It's not just a general thinking that this tree is self-existent, or this stupa is self-existent, or this platform is self-existent. It's specifically the ignorance which holds you yourself to be self-existent. Why is that so deadly? Then you can have mental afflictions. When someone hurts the self-existent me, I get mad. When someone helps the self-existent me, I'm happy. And in one case I respond with anger, and the other case I respond with attachment. Okay. And it gets me in trouble. That particular form of ignorance, grasping to the self of Mike, you grasping to the self of each of you, that's the one that's giving you trouble. That's the one that's causing all your suffering. That specific one. It's so specific that it has a separate name called Jigso La Tawa. And that is the first link of dependent origination. Holding on to that particular self is the first link. Say Semchen. Semchen. If you're trying to learn Tibetan, I'll explain this word a little bit, because Dragpa Shedrup gives a good explanation. Generally speaking, in Buddhist philosophy, we distinguish between Buddhas and non-Buddhas. Buddhas and non-Buddhas. Non-Buddhas we call Semchen. Okay. These are living beings, but if you're going to be more precise, living beings who are not yet Buddhas. Sem means mind. Chen means possesses. Does the Buddha possess a mind? Of course, he has body number 4. So technically speaking, a Buddha is a Semchen. But in Buddhist philosophy, we don't use this word for Buddhas. Okay? It's used for all other... When you say, I'm going to save all sentient beings, you're referring to all other... This is the word that they're translating. A living being. Is the Buddha alive? Of course. Is the Buddha sentient? Of course. Is he a Semchen, sentient being? No. It's a huge debate in the monastery. Okay? This is the first time I've ever seen in Buddhist scripture a good explanation of this word. Chone Dragpa Shedrup says, a mind haver is called a mind haver because they have a mind which is tortured by samsara. Who's that leave out? I mean, it leaves out Buddhas automatically. So that's a beautiful explanation. You know, Sem means mind, and Chen means haver. So Semchen, or the word sentient being, is always referring in Buddhist philosophy to a being whose mind is still tormented by samsara. I was afraid you asked me that. It's a Pamshe. Pamshe means general explanation, and please don't ask for any detail. Technically speaking, an arhat has overcome samsara. Technically speaking, he still has suffering. Okay, his body is still getting old and wrinkled and bald and everything else. Okay, that's a very difficult point. I won't get into it. Kamala Shila says the reason the Buddha mentioned number 2 here is to refer to that specific kind of grasping to self-existence which focuses on something that is yours, mine, as opposed to me. Okay. Number 2, the reason why the Buddha said those big bodhisattvas won't grasp to sentient beings is that they will not grasp to mine. Okay. The full form of the first link of dependent origination, the blind man, ignorance, is actually focused at these two, me and mine. Okay. When you perceive emptiness directly for the first time, the emptiness that you perceive is yours. It's the one that belongs to you. It's in my case, the emptiness of might. And when you come out, one of the many realizations you have, and we'll talk about those realizations, is when I get to be a Buddha, they won't call me Mike anymore. Okay? Seriously, it's one of the realizations you have. Meaning, I won't exist in the way that I grasp myself in the past. Okay? Self-existent me, self-existent mine. Okay? So, self means self-existent me for each person. Semchen or sentient being in this scripture means self-existent mind. My leg, my arm, my head, my life, my mind. Okay? What does Sok refer to? Why does the Buddha say those big bodhisattvas in the 10th of the 500-year periods won't grasp to a life? Kamala Shila says this refers to grasping to yourself as self-existent over the course of a whole lifetime. Okay? It's grasping to yourself as self-existent over the course of a lifetime. Over the course of a whole lifetime, and as you look back and reflect upon what you called yourself for the last 20, 30, 40 years, that thing that you're focusing on is Sok, is what the Buddha means when he says life. Okay? It's you over the period of your lifetime. Okay? That's what he means when he says Sok. You've never looked back on that being who lived that whole life and said, oh, it's just my projection. Okay? Never happened. Up until this moment, you have always thought that if you wanted to help that being, you had to manipulate some external objects. You know, if you want to be happy, you got to go to the store and get some food. If you want to be relaxed, you have to go out to Santa Cruz and take a vacation. You know, if you want to look nice, you have to exercise that body. Those are all ignorance. That's not the way you get those things. It's not the way it happens. It's only by collecting good deeds. You don't know if you go to the beach whether you're going to get sunburned or healthy, or whether you're going to get skin cancer or a nice tan. You don't know. Going to the beach is not a cause for being relaxed. Ask any parent. No. You don't know. Going to the beach is not a cause of happiness. Period. It's not. Oftentimes when you go to the beach you get some relaxation, but not all the time. Therefore, ergo, going to the beach is not a cause of happiness. If you were happy at the beach, it wasn't going to the beach that made you happy. Because lots of people go to the beach and have a miserable time. Okay? Going to the beach is not the cause of enjoying yourself at the beach. Period. Okay? But your whole life has been acting on that premise. The whole life has been acting on the premise that if you manipulate these outside causes and change something, you can obtain what you're looking for. It's not that. You have to work on what? Fix your projections. How do you do that? Plant new ones. How do you do that? Help other people. Practice the Dharma. You know, if you want to have a good time at the beach, go to Vajrapani and cook a nice dinner for everybody, right, Jim? I'm hoping you get more volunteers than that. I don't think it'll work. Say Gansat? Gansat? Gansat means person, and Kamala Shila says in this case it refers to the person out there trying to manipulate things, coming and going, over and over. Okay? The person out there trying to manipulate his or her world, trying to fix it by external means. They don't work. If it doesn't work once out of 100 times, it's not a cause. Causes have to work all the time. If you find a real cause for happiness, it better work every time. Would you, as you walk up to an airplane, this happened to me in Russia, you know, and the stewardess is up there, and they say, if they got up there and said, we're not sure if the plane's going to fly today, you know, we haven't figured out the causes that make a plane fly. You know, it's 90% sure. You know, 90% sure it'll stay up in the air. We've got it almost down, you know. This makes sense. You know, just get in, strap yourself in. 90% you're going to make it to Moscow, you know. We don't quite understand why airplanes fly. That's not causation. That's not scientific. Science means replicating an experiment. You know, if you do the same thing with the same conditions, the same thing should happen again. But you can go to the beach and have a good time, or you can go to the beach and have a lousy time. So going to the beach doesn't create happiness. It's just not a cause. And it's crazy to get into a plane if they tell you it's only going to work part of the time. You know. I know. No, I know. What's keeping the plane up is not the engines and the air. Okay, it's your projection. and no, and you're hoping that it lasts until they touch down. You know. No, and so for some people it doesn't.